Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of the Evil Safety Dudes. I am your host, Mr. Aaron Iacino, the Director of Risk Management for Innovative Business Consultants. This is a show on all things employee health and safety, from how not to get mugged if you're a traveling salesman to how not to bring in toxic chemicals when you're cleaning. Now, I am super excited. I know I say that every single show, but I have today with me Greg Dziewonski with me. He is the National Director of Krav Maga Federation of America, and I'm just so excited to pick this guy's brain on all things Krav Maga and law enforcement training and civilian self-defense and employee security. So without further ado, sir, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Aaron, and I'm glad to be on your show, and I'm excited as well.
Awesome. Now, where are you calling in from today?
From Mace Landing, New Jersey.
New Jersey, all
which
right.
Which is about a few minutes from Atlantic City.
Okay, nice. And what's your weather like today?
It's not too bad. It's a little windy, not too cold, so we're surviving.
All right. Well, we're out of Sioux City, Iowa. We're on the Nebraska and South Dakota border. We're on the west side of the state.
I've been to.
Oh, really?
I've been to Sioux City. Yes.
Okay. Yes, I know that.
I did the Krav Maga seminar in Sioux City maybe 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, I just had Mr. Ryan Johnson on the show, and we were talking about that. So that's really cool that you've been here. All right.
Well, Ryan Johnson is my friend, and I did the seminar actually at his school.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. I was really jealous when we were talking about that, and but now I get to talk to you, so that's pretty cool. And he was excited that you were coming on the show as well. So, if you allow me just to kind of nerd out, I love Krav Maga. In my opinion, it's one of the best self-defense systems, in the world. And so, I want to ask a lot of questions on that, but please don't let me get too nerded out where I forget to talk about your new book. Why don't we just do that so I don't forget? Because I'm also excited about this book. Why don't you tell us about this book that you just came out with?
Okay, so it took me about a year and a half to put this book together, and actually when the COVID hit, that helped me to allocate time to finish it. So kind of, sometimes the bad things, turn out to be good things.
Right.
I wanted to make a book that would be easy to understand for everyone, that everyone could learn Krav Maga from it. So the pictures were very important. The descriptions were important. So we took a lot of time to make it. The book has 420 pages with over 200 Krav Maga techniques from beginner to expert, and over 800 pictures, color pictures in it. So very easy to understand. I was testing it by showing it to my 13-year-old son.
Okay.
And having him read the description, look at the picture, and perform the technique. And he was able to do it every single time.
Wow, that says a lot. So there's hope for me then, if he could do it.
Absolutely.
All right.
There's hope for everyone.
Yes. Well, that's awesome. And I think that's very important because even though Krav Maga is getting a lot more popular in the United States, there is not a Krav Maga school everywhere. It's not.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's Taekwondo schools, in a lot of places, but there might even be an MMA school here and there, but to get Krav Maga is still very special. So for people that want to learn it that are rural or in a city that doesn't have it, buying that book, they could learn a lot of the techniques.
I agree with that. And that was my challenge when I started learning Krav Maga. I wanted to learn from the best. So I found Master Alain Cohen from Israel, but he lives in Israel. I live in the United States. So it doesn't mean, it's not like we can train, a couple times a week. We can train a couple times per year for a couple weeks. And And he said, look, you will come to me, I will come to you, we train. But also I've used his DVDs
Okay.
and his books, and that helped a lot
Definitely.
in the meantime
Definitely.
before our training sessions.
Well, that's great. So, he is in Israel, and I was reading up on you a little bit, and I saw how you're under him, and then you also study with another grandmaster. And help me with the name, Rafi?
Raphael Grisi is, okay, so Raphael Grisi was the first student of Emil Lichtenfeld, founder of Krav Maga. And Raphael Grisi is Alain Cohen's teacher and a master. I've met Rafi a couple times. I haven't really trained under him, but I've been learning from Alain Cohen.
Okay. And what an honor to learn from Alan, who learned from Rafi, who learned from Emmy. I mean, that lineage is so special, and there's one of my concerns with Krav Maga as it comes to America is just the watering down of it and it becoming not real anymore, not effective anymore, and so just to know that there's folks like you in America who have this lineage and have met some of Emmy's students and could really get the full understanding of the art and the discipline and the purpose of it, and to teach that in America, that does my heart good, because I just even people today, oh, Krav Maga, yeah, that's nothing. I'm like, well, you probably not experienced a real Krav Maga practitioner then,
Yeah, and I would advise to anyone who trains Krav Maga, at some point go to the source, visit Israel, train in Israel for a week, for a couple of weeks. It'll change your perspective on Krav Maga. I've done it several times. Before the COVID, we used to go every year to Israel to train for a week. And I also trained at Wingate Institute, which was considered to be a birthplace of Krav Maga.
Wow, and Wingate is in Israel as well?
Yes.
And so
in Netanya.
Awesome. So a lot of other martial arts students understand this. Like if you do Muay Thai, the chance to go to Thailand and train is so special. If you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the chance to go to Brazil and train is very special. But same with Krav Maga. If you study Krav Maga and you get a chance to go to Wingate or any of these other schools in Israel, it's very special. And I think especially I know a lot of American black belts who want to do this too, because they want to make sure they're doing it right. And so I think that's great advice, and maybe one day I'll be fortunate enough to get to go over there and learn, and as well as come up to New Jersey and study with you as well. And man, it would just be so great and such an honor. I saw on your website.
You're always welcome.
Hey, thank you. And I notice a lot of Krav Maga students, they do practice multiple disciplines and well. Do you study any other disciplines?
Yes. So my journey started in Poland with karate. Then I moved into judo for a few years. Then I had a little injury, had to stop. And right now, besides Krav Maga, I learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from Master Carlos Machado.
Oh, wow.
I was just awarded blue belt. So this is a beginning of my journey, but I really enjoy it. And I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a great supplement to Krav Maga.
Definitely.
Although we've always had ground techniques in our Krav Maga program, but Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu just happens to be the best ground fighting that it exists. So if you put the 1 and 2 together, you get the best of 2 worlds.
Definitely. And, help me with my understanding of the birth of Krav Maga. Emmy was taking what worked. He wasn't really caring so much about because some styles, oh, this move, these are the only moves we're ever going to know. We're never going to add to it. And Emmy was not like that. He's like, no, we're going to only do what works. And if we find out something doesn't work anymore, it's going out. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, that is correct. Emmy was very smart, very talented. His background was wrestling and boxing. And when he lived in Czechoslovakia, and Czechoslovakia got annexed by Germany in 1938, and when Nazis started beating up on Jews, he started resistance with his buddies from the gym. And that's where he found out that it didn't always work on the street against the sticks, against the knives, against the multiple attackers. And that's when he started adapting anything that could be useful and practical for the real fight from other martial arts.
Nice. And, and to my understanding, that was something he wanted to continue to happen. He didn't want it to stay static. He wanted it to always to grow and adapt and always have the best of the best in the system. Is that fair to say that as well?
Exactly. Krav Maga is an open program, so techniques always change because tactics change, so we have to adapt as we go, and some things are not useful anymore, and we don't do them anymore.
Right. And that's beautiful, and that's to me, that's a humble approach too, because there's, I've met a lot of martial art masters, and, our style is the best style in the world, and these moves are the best moves in the world, and there's no need to change, and it's like, well, that was kind of invented, in the 1800s, and people don't always fight that way anymore, and we should probably grow and adapt a little bit.
Exactly.
Awesome. And so you, I was reading that you achieved a 4th degree black belt rank in Krav Maga. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Wow. That is awesome. And so you also have a school as well in New Jersey.
Yes, I have two. I have two of them. They're in about half an hour driving distance. One is in my hometown, Mace Landing. The other one is also in South Jersey in Vineland. And so we have two locations. The name of my school is Performance Krav Maga. I started it 10 years ago. And yeah, we've trained a lot of students, produced some black belts and instructors. So we're going strong.
Awesome. And then you also do, I don't know if I want to call them tours, but you also travel around and put on Krav Maga clinics as well. Is that correct?
Yes, I do. I go for the seminars around the United States, sometimes abroad. I certify instructors, so I'm also providing instructor courses if someone wants to get certified under our federation, and just having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah,
meeting new people.
Yeah, it's just so fun to travel, and especially to meet like-minded people who are into Krav Maga and self-defense. It's special when you could gather a group of those folks together, because it's not often in everyday life that you're with people who you understand. And understand our love and our passion for self-defense and Krav Maga. Now, you mentioned federation, so you're the national director of the Krav Maga Federation of America. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, Krav Maga Federation AC, which stands for Alain Cohen.
Okay.
So basically, Master Alain Cohen is the president in Israel. I'm a national director for the United States.
Nice. And, what are some of your thoughts of Krav Maga in America versus in Israel? Because I know in every other style, it's vastly different. If you study Taekwondo in America and you go study Taekwondo in Korea, it's completely different. Karate in America versus karate in Japan, completely different. Is it starting to get that way in America, where you see maybe a bunch of schools popping up calling themselves Krav and they're really not doing Krav?
Let's put it this way, that there's still good Krav Maga in America because a lot of top instructors have connection with Israel and they train in Israel and they train from good masters and grandmasters. But there's also schools that, let's say, somebody got a DVD on the internet and they were teaching MMA, and right now they're starting teaching Krav Maga. So that's what everybody wants to avoid, this type of school. But most of the time, schools with a good lineage, with the instructors, with the top instructors who go there and train and practice, you can find good Krav Maga in the United States.
Well, that's good. That's still good to hear, and I hope that continues on forever. I know, some people were looking at the style and looking at the future. There's concerns where there'll start to be maybe tournaments and competitions with Krav and things like that, and the only way to really do that is to really strip it down. Have you heard of any?
Yeah, put the rules.
Yeah, have you heard of any talk about making Krav competitions?
I'm not fan of it because we would have to put rules in place, and it wouldn't be a Krav Maga anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how you could do it. Would just become MMA, basically.
Right.
I mean, we already have that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you would have to take out all the good stuff, just like MMA did. In MMA they have no elbows that come straight down, and they have no groin strikes, and they don't have
exactly.
Yeah, a lot of the striking targets that are very effective they had to take out because the fight would just end too fast, and no one wants to see a fight end in 30 seconds. So they had to make it harder and harder to get someone to submit or knock them out. And yeah, I could see if they were to do that with Krav, they would have to just take too much stuff out of it.
Correct.
All right. Well, I want to switch gears here and talk about law enforcement for a minute. We talk a lot on the show about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for law enforcement, Judo for law enforcement, MMA for law enforcement even. But I wanted to talk to you about your thoughts on law enforcement officers studying Krav Maga and how that, if that's a good idea or a bad idea. What do you think?
Oh, that's an excellent idea because as far as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would be a great martial art to use to tackle somebody to the ground in a one-on-one situation. Krav Maga addresses multiple attackers, multiple suspects, addresses a situation when there's a knife involved, and also working with the firearms. I mean, we have excellent techniques, working with firearms, working with the baton, with the stick, using it to apprehend suspects, great control and handcuffing techniques. Actually, today before I came here to record this podcast with you, I was finishing my video on law enforcement, and I was just editing all those techniques. After the book, I had an idea to record everything on a video and make it an online course.
Yeah.
So this project is going online February 1st. It's going to be available. Everything that is my book is going to be on the videos, also with detailed explanation and shot from multiple angles.
That sounds really good. I'd really be excited to see that, some of the Krav Maga for law enforcement and the control techniques. That would be very, very exciting. So, well, thank you for doing that. And so,
sure.
Is that you mentioned online school or maybe a DVD to purchase on that?
Probably next thing is going to be DVD. Not too many people have DVD players anymore, or even Blu-ray. Everything is online. But right. I'll probably get, couple hundred copies and put it on eBay, on Amazon, so it's available.
Nice. I'm still old. I still have a DVD
just
player.
The online course, I think that's going to be very convenient because you can access from anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that I could see where that would be very good. I'm still old enough to where I have a DVD player, so I'll probably.
I do too. Most of the young people don't.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that is awesome. And so, when I hear people say that maybe Krav Maga is not good for law enforcement, I just know they don't really understand Krav Maga because it was created. Well, initially it was created, like you had mentioned, to protect the community. But then Emmy, when he made it to Israel, he became the defensive tactics instructor for the Israeli Defensive Forces. Is that correct?
Correct. Oh, yeah. Yep.
And I think
he held that position for 18 years, I believe, when Krav Maga was developed further, and it was a top secret of IDF for 18 years until Emmy retired and opened up his school for the civilian in 1964 in Netanya, and that's also when he started teaching law enforcement.
Oh, nice. So it's, I guess its birth was community, civilian safety, and then it got into military and stayed there for a very long time. And I imagine it got, very, some extra stuff got added to it for the military theater that just made it even better. And then it went back to civilians and then to law enforcement. So, it's good for law enforcement because it was created in a sense and for them. And so I always think of it, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Israel, everybody has to serve in the military. Is that correct?
That's right.
So they had to come up with a system that was simple but very effective for anybody to do, and they had to be able to learn it very quick because I don't think their boot camp was very long, maybe like 16 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, so in Israel, everybody has to serve. Everybody learns their basic Krav Maga program, which is basic, and it's based around the rifle because that's what soldiers have with them all the time. They're required to have it. But then when they go to like special forces, that's when you can see really good dynamic techniques, defenses against knife-on-knife fighting, working with pistols, working with rifles. So it's very exciting. So if somebody knows only civilian Krav Maga, there is more to it. There is a whole special forces program, and there's a whole law enforcement program built on top of that as well.
Nice. So Krav Maga is very good for law enforcement because it has a whole law enforcement side to it. And
correct.
I know in America there's a lot of different defensive tactics systems out there. The Gracies have one, the GST. Then in Nebraska, a lot of law enforcement agencies are using human factor research groups, pressure point control tactics, a PPCT program, and I know a lot of in Iowa they use what's called a SPEAR system. But it would be nice if the department said we're going to adopt the Krav Maga law enforcement defensive tactics program. If they were to do that, how would they even do that?
Well, I think that would be great because it is very effective. It is easy to retain because, as you know, a lot of Krav Maga techniques are based on a natural movement. So when you learn something that is based on natural movement, on your natural instinct, it's much easier to retain. So it doesn't require as many hours of repeated training as it could be with other systems.
Well, I think that's a big point. We talk a lot about on this show the lack of training that law enforcement officers get. Some do not have to do any defensive tactics in a year. Some are required to do 4 hours in a year. Some are required to do 8 hours in a year. And that's all very, very minimal. I mean, that is not a lot of training at all, especially for these people that are on the front line and actually need to use it probably more so. You know, these are the folks that have to run towards the gunshots instead of away. And so to have a system out there that it's actually less training needed to be able to perform, I think that's a great advantage.
It is. It really is. 2 years ago, I had the pleasure to train Coast Guard boarding team, which is like law enforcement for the Coast Guard. And they came to me and they said, look, we don't have that type of training in the Coast Guard. Can you help us? I said, absolutely. Get in here. I think if I give you 16 hours of training, you're going to be well prepared. And that's what we did for the next, 4 weeks. We spent 4 weeks because they have duties. And they did great.
Wow.
And that's what they adapted, the Coast Guard in Cape May.
Yeah, and I think for Coast Guard, I think Krav Maga would be very good because one of the things that I love about Krav Maga is it's not always on the mat, in this perfect dojo environment. Like if we're doing it right, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're supposed to go train on a bus. We're supposed to go train on a parking lot. We're supposed to go train for those guys in a boat, because everything's different in real life. When you're jumping from one boat to another and you're fighting on a deck, I mean, to be able to train and have your system work in that environment is key, because if it doesn't work in that environment, it's not good for them.
Yeah, and their biggest challenge was that they were always in a close quarters, surrounded by people with knives. So you never know what's going to happen. And that was our main objective, how to approach someone who does have a knife on them and they're in a close distance.
Wow. Yeah, people don't always know what folks are dealing with. I didn't know that until you just told me that, the Coast Guard is dealing with a lot of knife attacks and probably some machete attacks as well. And Krav Maga is so good for those.
Well, it's a Marine time, so everybody has a knife.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I mean, the knives for is probably the tools of the trades on a lot of those boats. So yeah, it's not always a folding pocket knife like we're dealing with in the mainland, but they're dealing with gutting knives and big knives, and they're just prevalent everywhere. And if you're trying not to go to jail, you're probably going to pick one of those up and swing it at the Coast Guard. Now, do you see a lot of law enforcement, sheriff's deputies, cops training on their own dime, just coming to the schools and wanting that extra training?
Yes. Yes. We have some officers coming to train with us, police officers. I have trained many people who were trying to get to the law enforcement, sheriff's department, police department, state police, and they did very well and they got accepted.
Nice.
Also, correctional officers. We get many correctional officers coming for training and, actually paying on their own dime, which we provide law enforcement discounts to help everybody out.
Well, that's wonderful that you do that, and we always applaud all law enforcement officers on this show that spend their own time and money to, get better at defensive tactics, because we feel that the better they are at hand-to-hand combat, the less likely they will shoot anybody, because they're just not going to need to as much. Now, sometimes you need to, but not all the time you do. And I feel that if more law enforcement officers were, I say, martially competent, there would be less police shootings,
Oh, absolutely. Because, most of the time you can you can avoid that situation when you have to use the deadly force if you know how to prevent it in the first place.
Right.
And it's not always possible, but many times.
Definitely. Now, originally, help me out with this. When I was studying kind of Emmy's vision for Krav Maga, he was very into fitness, and he
Yes,
wanted everybody to be more fit. And is that correct? Was he really into physical fitness?
yes. And also he was a dancer. Not
Nice.
everybody knows that, but also he was a dancer. So yeah, he was very, very into the fitness. He was great built when he was young, and that's important also. And we have some people coming for that aspect, that they wanna get in shape, that they wanna build some muscle. So with the proper warm up, you can help people achieve that.
Definitely. And I'm really into that, because as far as surviving a violent attack, I believe besides your training, the more fit you are, when you could kind of survive that initial barrage from the attacker, and maybe they're gassing out, but you're not so much because you were fit. I think that's actually going to help you as well, in survival. So I think fitness is important for self-defense.
Absolutely, you have to have a you know strong core, strong legs, strong arms. It all helps with the martial art.
And some people who have who are disrespecting Krav Maga, they're saying, "Oh, that's just fitness," like cardio kickboxing. It's not real. It's just fitness. And it's like, no, we just start out with fitness because fitness is important in survival. But that's just the
Yeah,
warm up. After that, we're doing technique, we're doing drills, things like that.
yeah, and that's a misperception. Maybe from watching a little bit of class or going to one of those academies that they're not really doing the real Krav Maga. But the way we run our training is the 15 minutes of uh, intense exercises. It starts slow and it gets into very intensive. After the 15 minutes, we can run some partner exercises as far as the fitness drill. Then we go to the techniques, and after the techniques, the last, let's say, 5-10 minutes of the class, that's when we do the drills. That's when we do the kicks. That's when we trying to see how everything would work in a real life situation.
Yeah, definitely. Those drills are so important, getting that muscle memory and doing it more in doing the techniques more in a dynamic situation. Now, when you guys are working the kicks and the punches, I notice a lot of Krav schools, they are not wearing any gloves to help kind of strengthen the bones of the hand to help more in a real situation where you wouldn't have gloves. What do you guys do there for gloves versus no gloves when you're practicing punching?
It depends at which level we train. If it's like instructor course, normally we don't bother with the gloves. But for the students, we encourage using MMA type of gloves. Well, simply because if you start bleeding all over, on your hand, and then you cannot do it on the next day, it's not really beneficial to the student.
Definitely.
So, we are for protection, but there's going to be times when there's going to be no gloves, there's going to be no shin pads, because you have to experience how's that going to really feel on the street.
Yeah, for sure. And that body conditioning and just the psychological training for that to prepare your mind, I think that's very important. I love a
Yes,
lot
it is.
of things about Krav, but you mentioned this earlier. I like how Krav Maga focuses a lot on multiple attacker situations. And I feel that is very important for everybody, law enforcement, civilians, because there are in reality multiple attacker situations.
Yes.
And a lot of other styles, it's always single attacker. You know, if I am studying boxing or Muay Thai or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a lot of times, most of the time, I mean, I've never seen in any of those combat sports where they have multiple attacker scenarios or drills.
That's why we pay attention to things like situational awareness. Also, using ordinary objects to use as a weapon of opportunity.
Yes.
And also that's where our philosophy comes, that you should never go to the ground voluntarily to finish the fight. It can happen, but it's better to deal with the problem as quickly as possible and come up and be in a standing position, because of the situation where you can face multiple attackers and you don't even know it yet. Because somebody can be in the car, somebody can be around the corner, somebody can be leaving a building, and you started a fight with one person, or this person started a fight with you, you've been attacked, and all of a sudden, you know, you're fighting 2-3 people. So you always have to be aware of that this can happen, and a lot of times it will happen.
Yeah, definitely. And I like how Krav Maga, you know, focuses on the situational awareness, and when you do deal with an attacker and you disengage, you know, looking both ways, breaking that tunnel vision, seeing if there's somebody else out there, and so you don't get that sucker punch. And so I think that's very, very, very lifelike. I also like how Krav Maga focuses on attacks from the side and the back. And that was really fun for me when I first started studying Krav, because, again, my whole martial art career, I was always focusing on fighting someone directly in front of me. And now I'm learning how to do a side hammer fist and, you know, an elbow that goes to the side and elbows that go to the back. And that was new and exciting for me. And so, you know, I love that besides multiple attacker, but attacks from the side and the back. Do you guys spend a lot of time on those as well?
Well, it's important, especially if you have to fight someone who's trained. So let's take a boxer. A boxer is going to be very, very good with his punches, with his defense, with the movement. But in a boxing, you cannot attack from the back. That's the rule. So this is what we want to do, because from that position, it will be much harder for them to come up with the defense because they're never trained it.
Yeah, definitely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
You know, this is very important, especially when you deal with somebody who's trained in a different martial art, which has direct approach.
Yeah, I could see that. You know, I never thought of it like that. I was always looking at from the angle of just the bad guy wanting to be a bad guy and sneak up and attack you, but also from the offensive perspective, if I am fighting a trained person and I can get to the side or to the back of them, I pretty much take their training away. You know, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean by that.
Yeah, it's leveling the playing field, and so that's cool because, you know, I think with MMA being so popular, I believe there's more and more people out there in society that know stuff. You know, maybe they're not good at it, but, you know, a lot of kids today, they know an armbar, they know a rear naked choke. You know,
right.
You know, when I grew up,
and seeing Krav Maga, we train on so many things, because we train defense against stick attacks, defense against the gun thread, rifle attacks being used as a cold weapon, many knife attacks. We do ground fighting, we do choke defenses. So the chances are that, you know, that skilled MMA fighter might be actually better fighter than you.
Right.
Because his focus is somewhere else. So when he puts his hours, you know, training, you know, 4 punches and 7 elbows and 6 kicks, and that's what he's good at, chances are that, he can take you in one-on-one fight, but we don't have rules, so we don't have to stick to the rules. It's about survival.
Yeah. One of the funny things that I learned early on is the mental conditioning of releasing someone when they tap out, So in MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, those of us who train that all the time, we're conditioned to, if you get a submission, they tap out, you let go. And I just thought that in a street situation, in a survival, that could go against someone. If you finally get them in, say, a rear naked choke and they're about to pass out and you're about to survive this encounter and they tap, I wonder how many people who train automatically would release,
Yeah, probably most. That's why in Krav Maga, we go for a broken arm.
Right.
No tapping.
Yeah.
I mean, when we train, we have to release.
Right, definitely.
But we don't wait for somebody to tap. We're going to the position and we release.
Yeah, and there's training scars, in self-defense, and things like I remember a lot of law enforcement agencies studied this case really hard. There was a off-duty police officer. He was in a convenience store when it got robbed, and he was at gunpoint, and he disarmed the attacker flawlessly, just like he'd been trained, but then he handed the gun back to the attacker, and then the attacker shot him. Because that was always part of the training, like subconsciously was, your partner puts a gun in your face, you disarm it, and then you hand it back. And then, you keep
so they can so they can do the technique.
Yeah.
Well, there was a fix for it. The way we train is we never hand the weapon back to our partner. We take a step back and we put it on the ground.
Yeah.
And they have to bend and pick it up, because this kind of, breaks the pattern and gives you time to think, what are you doing?
Right.
But if you train a technique 1,000 times, I disarm, I give the weapon, I disarm, I give the weapon back, I disarm, I give the weapon back, that's going to become part of your routine.
Definitely.
And this is exactly what you're going to execute.
Yeah, they always say in that critical situation, you're just going to result back to your highest level of training, and if that's what you've done 1,000 reps of, that's what you're going to do. And so, I like that, and I learned that from Krav, and then also just back and forth. When I take the gun, now I'm the bad guy, and now
right.
And so that kind of reduces that training scar. And I have students all the time that they're so nice as people, they don't want to like throw the gun, or drop it. They feel like they're being rude. And I have to constantly tell them, throw the gun, step back, drop the gun. they they're conditioned to being a nice person. So they don't want to, because that's like, would be considered a jerk thing to do, just drop something for someone to pick it up. I'm like, no, and I have to explain over and over again.
Right.
This is why we do this. We don't want to develop a training scar.
The proper training is very important because of the situations like this, like you mentioned. That could have been avoided if the instructor knew better, and he should have known.
Right.
The instructor who trained that, police officer, because obviously he didn't have a problem disarming the weapon, but then made a mistake that came from improper training.
Yeah, muscle memory, just
yes.
We call them training scars. Another thing that I like about Krav too for realism is, training with clothes on. I know that sounds funny, but if we were to be attacked in the street, we would have clothes on. We would have shoes on. If
right.
we in law enforcement, not only do they have their stiff uniform and boots on, but they're going to have a big old duty belt, sometimes a big old vest. And so training like that, with that gear on, I think is good. And in a lot of martial arts, other than boxing and wrestling, you're not training with shoes on at all. And it does change how you move and kick and how you pivot your foot when you're trying to get total body sponsorship, trying to get power out of a kick or a number two, a backhand punch like a cross, and you got shoes on, but you're always used to pivoting with bare feet on a mat. It does change things. So I like the realism training of Krav Maga, I think it's just better for setting up people for success in real life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and you will see in the specific Krav Maga training for the law enforcement, they should actually come with the boots on and the service belt, because that's how they're gonna be on the street.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
the way you train, that's the way you're gonna fight or defend yourself.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You know, no sense training in a rash guard when you're going to be wearing a vest,
Right.
or at least incorporate the vest a lot in your training, because it changes your flexibility and your range of motion. I don't know if a lot of people know that. I've never worn a vest before, but you think you could do a defensive front kick or a teep very well. Well, yeah, in the gym with your sweatpants on, but when you put a vest on, sometimes it inhibits you from lifting your knee up properly. And so training that way is going to be very important.
It definitely limits your movement.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I'm probably not great at this. I need to do more of this, but, as far as that different environmental training, what are some of the different places you've taken students to train in besides just in the gym?
Oh, we use like a woods. We actually have a couple nice parks next to my locations. So we've used that environment for the training, or even for like a 1 day, 2 day seminar type of thing. Using old buildings. We do carjacking defense. So it's always, good to have a vehicle to train outside and be prepared for the carjacking attempt. So
nice.
So that's most of the time, what we'll do.
Yeah, that sounds great, because when if you're doing a gun threat, handgun threat from the front, for instance, and you're on your feet,
Right.
It's easy, easier. But when you're sitting in a car and someone's got a gun to the side of your head and they're on their feet and you're in your car with your seatbelt, if you didn't do that, if you didn't rep that, it is a totally different world, and than being in the gym on your feet. So yeah, that car stuff is fun. Real good.
And your options become limited when you're in a vehicle. So you really have to use the proper technique in the first place, and you have to do it properly.
Definitely.
Because otherwise there's too much risk involved.
A little off topic, but have you seen some of the interesting different new martial art competitions coming out of Europe, where they're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in cars, or MMA in phone booths and stuff like that?
No, I haven't actually, but there's a big expo and a martial arts show in Atlantic City on 28th of January, 28th to 30th. So I'm planning on being there, and they have a lot of martial arts demonstrations and vendors, and it's a great event.
Well, that sounds good. I'd love to go. On when I was seeing these online, where these guys were having a jiu-jitsu competition, and you're in the car, I was just thinking, that's Krav Maga. You're actually training in a realistic environment now.
Yeah.
But to them it was a new competition. This is exciting. This is something fresh and new. And I'm thinking, nope, that's Krav Maga. And then same thing when I saw the guys boxing and doing MMA in a small phone booth. This is the new competition. Mm-hmm. It's exciting. They can't run from each other. They can't dance around. They have to brawl. And I'm thinking, that's Krav Maga. They're actually fighting in a realistic environment and close quarters, and that can happen all the time.
Yeah.
Also, office spaces. I think a lot of people work in office spaces, and I did one class in an office space in a lobby, and that was pretty. I had some students there, and that was kind of eye-opening from them, we were just working on some break falls and some different kicks from the ground and standing base, but them doing it on that carpet was an eye-opener for them, how different it is than the mats. Yeah. And then you have obstacles.
I run some active shooting courses for companies, for offices, and that's always interesting because you get people like with no experience at all, and they're used to their comfort in their working environment. And right now, somebody comes, shows up with a rifle and starts shooting, and what do? So those are also very, very good.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Krav Maga for active killer, active shooters, because I believe Krav Maga is extremely effective for a civilian, for an active killer, because in Krav Maga, there's so much focus on an unarmed person go against a person with a rifle.
Right.
And I don't know of any other, martial arts systems that really focus on that as much, I like you started as a kid in karate, and I don't ever remember the teacher bringing out a rifle.
No.
And say, and it may have been there originally, but not by the time I was studying it. But the focus in Krav Maga it's still there. Long gun, handgun, knife. You were saying all these earlier, baton, but a lot of the long gun stuff is in there. So if I was trapped in an office and I could not escape and I could not barricade and the shooter is going to come in, Krav Maga, that's the answer right there, because you would have done so much training of, control, redirecting it and controlling it and attacking and taking away, and you know how to do it from live side, dead side, all of that stuff. So I think
it was amazing to see how we could take a couple of office secretaries wearing their high heels, show them and explain them the strategy and the tactic, and then I had my student in a gear going through the door with the rifle, and they were able actually to take him down. So it's amazing. It's just, something that needs to be, and this is something that is not, that you're going to pretty much retain if you had to use that, because it's not very complicated. It's mostly the tactics.
Right. And that's key too, and that's what I love about Krav, because if it's too complex, it's not in the system.
Yeah, we say if it's too complicated, it's not Krav Maga.
Yeah, I've had some friends who studied a lot of wushu and kung fu, and they just couldn't use it when we sparred. When it came time to do some MMA, they ended up just doing MMA, boxing, kickboxing, wrestling and jiu-jitsu. And I was like, where was your kung fu? They're like, well, I haven't mastered it yet to be able to do it in this situation. And I'm like, well, how long are you going to study it before you could actually use it? And it just did, if you have a passion for it and it's your hobby, fine. But, if it's really about self-defense and survival, it's got to be simple, and
Yep.
I've studied a lot of different law enforcement disarming techniques, and once I learned the Krav ones, I don't really study those other ones too much because there was too many steps, you know, and it was complicated. And then this only works on the right-handed shooter. Well, what if I get a left-handed shooter, And so that always bothered me. Or this only works if they approach you on your right. Well, that bothers me too, I don't want to spend 1,000 hours on this and then somebody approaches me from the left. I want something that is principle based, that'll work.
Right.
Yeah, and Krav is that, right? It's techniques are for sure there, but it's definitely on principles,
Yeah, and every time you have to make a decision, let's say if you're at the gunpoint, and every time you have to make a decision, do I disarm with my left hand or do I disarm with my right hand? It stops you. You have to make a decision. So we always prefer to have one technique that will work for many directions.
Yeah, and I like that. Even with some of the other chokes and the wrist grabs, I was taught many different ways, but then I was also taught this one will work on all. This one technique will work if they grab you from the same side, cross side, two hands. I'm like, well, that's the one I'm going to focus on because that's going to work in every situation. I don't want too many tools in my toolbox to where, like you said, now my decision making's taking too long, and that could be the time where now I'm not alive anymore because I was thinking versus reacting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, so I love all those reasons about Krav, the practicality of it, the simplicity of it, the attacks from the back, the side, the multiple attackers, the focus on the weapons. Actually, the weapon stuff is probably what drew me to it to begin with because I was, a pretty decent fighter, sport fighter, but, your Muay Thai and your boxing isn't really going to help you when they come at you with a baton, and a knife. And so, but Krav, it specializes in that. And, growing up, watching James Bond and Jason Bourne and, it's like wanting to be that. But there wasn't like martial arts where you could actually go learn that. But then when Krav started coming to America, it was like, well, that's that. That's what I felt anyway. As that's how it looked to me. Like I can now learn those techniques that those guys are doing. And like you said, that's what the special forces are using in Israel. It is. They're James Bond. They're Jason Bourne. Well, sir, it has been an honor to have you on the show. We're going to come up to our wrap-up segment. I want to make sure everybody knows all the projects that you got going on. So just to recap, so if someone wanted to purchase the book, how would they go about doing that?
The easiest way to go to Amazon.com and search for Krav Maga Best Techniques.
Nice.
That's the title of the book.
Krav Maga Best Techniques. Great. And everybody should know how to use Amazon by now. I mean, I know grandmas who even order off Amazon. Yeah. So, yeah, that's great. And then you mentioned possibly February 1st online DVD coming out.
Yeah. February 1st, the online course will be up and running. And that's going to be on my website, which is Krav Maga-courses.com.
Krav Maga-courses.com.
Correct.
That's easy. All right, cool. So got some online training, some books, and then if somebody was in your area, what was the name of your school one more time?
Performance Krav Maga.
Performance Krav Maga. And you said you had 2 locations. What were those cities?
One in Mays Landing, one in Violent.
Nice.
Both in New Jersey.
Nice. And what would you say to someone who says, you know what, I want to go to your school and I want to learn Krav Maga for self-defense, but I'm not in good shape. Let me work out for 6 months and then I'll join your school. What would you tell them?
That's a big mistake. You get in shape by doing Krav Maga.
Yes. So many people say that, let me get in shape and then I'll join the school. It's like, no, that's how you get in shape is you join the school.
Exactly.
You don't wait till you get healthy to go to the doctor. You go to the doctor when you're sick it's 2 birds with 1 stone. You're going to get fit and you're going to learn self-defense all at the same time. So, if you're not fit, so what? Sign up, get fit while you learn, You don't have to be good to get started, but you have to start to get good. Hey, there you go. I like that one. Definitely. All right. Well, any other projects or anything else you want to mention that people could get a hold of? Different.
Well, we have upcoming February 15 to 18 in Virginia. My teacher, Master Alain Cohen, is coming for 4 days course.
Wow.
So if you're in that area, you can contact me. I'll put you in touch. Excellent training. We're doing certification courses. We're doing just the training. Some of our students are going to advance to the black belt. So it's always good training with Master Cohen.
Wow, that's exciting. Thank you for letting us know about that. Oh,
Sure.
All right. Mr. Greg Dziewonski, thank you for coming on the show, sir. It's been a complete honor to pick your brain and talk about Krav Maga. And for those out there, I'm Aaron Iacino. Today, together, we are the Evil Safety Dudes. Until next time, everybody, stay safe.